Hi y'all, before we start, I want to warn you that the topics in this episode may be triggering for some listeners. Please read the podcast description for more details. Welcome to Rhode Wellness, where we explore all things health and self-care. Whether you're seeking mental clarity, physical fitness, or insight from students like you, we've got you covered. Hello everyone, I'm Olivia Rathbun, and you're listening to the Rhode Wellness Podcast.
Hi, I'm Kelley Ryan, and I am the coordinator of Violence Prevention and Advocacy Services.
Today we are going to be talking about violence prevention and what you can do to protect yourself against sexual assault and domestic violence. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kelley, but the majority of sexual assaults happen at parties. So what can students do to prevent or protect themselves from that happening?
I think in addition to sexual assault, but really anytime you're going out in a social situation, especially when alcohol is being involved, I think the number one thing is to have a plan. And so before going out with your friends, discussing where are we going, how are we getting home, what do we want the night to look like for each one of us, right? And I think when we talk about alcohol, it's really knowing your limits, knowing how much you can safely drink without becoming impaired to the point of a blackout or being sick. But also, if you're going out with a group of friends, is who in our friend group is going to be the one who is in charge for the night, making sure that if we are all going out and one of us is like, I'm going out tonight, I had a bad week, I'm not going to drink too much, like even if someone says like, I don't want to go home with anyone, etc., that person in that friend group really makes sure that everyone is accounted for at the end of the night. I think that's huge and like super important to, before you go out, is having those discussions with your friends of like how much I can drink or what are the factors that may lead me to be in a situation to overdrink, right? If you had a bad week, is what is your emotional state before going out? But also making sure like basic safety tips too, like sharing locations. If you're going out with someone for the first time, share your location. If you and your friends are going out for the night, make sure you have your good friends' locations on. And that is something, again, that I think it's useful this day and age. Making sure if you're at a party and you see someone who is by themselves and maybe they're not your friend or they didn't come with you, but they look confused, lost, maybe the party's gotten broken up and they're trying to figure out how to get back to campus, invite them to be part of your group. Those basic tips are, I think, what keeps people safe. And I always say it's not up to someone to prevent themselves from being sexually assaulted. It is up to people. What we know is we have a small amount of individuals, whether we're at URI or any other university, actually hurt others. What we need are those around the person who hurt others to acknowledge that behavior, to step in. If you see someone approaching someone at a party who's intoxicated and maybe leading them away, going up to that individual and being like, hey, what are you doing? You shouldn't be talking. That person's too drunk. And what we really need is those active bystanders in the moment to stop those who hurt others and putting the responsibility not on potential victims, putting the responsibility on us as humans to keep an eye out for one another. And if we see something that doesn't look like someone's going to be safe or someone could get hurt, you know what, going up to that person and saying something, because what we know is like just basic facts about bystander intervention is when one person sees something at a party and that makes them uncomfortable, they feel like that's wrong in their gut, guess what? Other people there see it too. And most of the time, people wait for that one person to say something before they jump in. And so whenever I talk to students about like how do we maintain safety, especially at party situations, is I'm going to challenge students to say there are going to be times when I'm going to want you to be that person who steps forward, knowing that most of the time you're going to have peers who are going to follow and support you. But a lot of times people will wait for that one person to go first. There are going to be times when you need to be that person. And I think ultimately that's how we create safer environments here at the university.
Yeah, and can you talk more about alcohol and what people can do to drink safely in these environments? And especially in today's day and age where alcohol can be used as like a date rape drug?
Absolutely. Alcohol is the number one date rape drug on a college campus. And when alcohol is used as a date rape drug, it is used to incapacitate someone because alcohol gives you a temporary brain injury if you black out. That part of your brain that forms memories shuts down. So a person doesn't just forget what's happened. Sometimes there's no formed memories. And the way you black out is your alcohol level rises. And so the easiest way that happens is by taking multiple shots. Or maybe someone giving you a mixed drink that's really heavy with some sort of hard alcohol. So grain, vodka, rum. And maybe it is, if you take a solo cup that is filled halfway with vodka, right there, you're looking at usually 4 or 5 shots. And if you drink 2 of those in an hour, you can have up to 10 drinks. That will black out an individual. And again, it may taste good. You may think in your mind, I'm just holding a red Solo cup, so I'm only having 1 drink. But it's really understanding that that 1 drink is actually usually 4 or 5, 6 standard drinks. So it's really important, I always say, to pour your own drinks. Bring the alcohol that you want to drink. So, for example, I always say no one should be drinking hard alcohol. I think hard alcohol causes a lot of issues. But if you're going out and you know you're going out for 4 hours, and you want to make sure you maintain it so you're not drunk, so you don't put yourself and others at risk, is bringing out 4 seltzers or beer. It's much easier to manage and make sure that you are able to maintain your own personal safety.
Mm-hmm. And the tip that you said about having a plan beforehand and having someone, like as the caretaker, is so important, because if someone ends up going past that limit and possibly blacking out, that's important for that caretaker to step in to make sure that, they aren't being led away by someone else, and that someone is at least conscious in that situation to keep their friends safe or keep other people safe at that party.
And even know how much your friend is drinking and what they were drinking.
Yes.
Because again, you want to know if your friends just happen to be on any type of medication, whether it's an antibiotic or an antidepressant or even certain medications for acne. Those in itself can impact how alcohol affects you. So I think it's important, again, to have these conversations from a harm reduction lens with your friends of how are we going to stay safe.
Shout out to Accutane. I know that. But when people are finding their limits, especially in these first couple of weeks, I know freshmen are more vulnerable in these situations. Can you tell me why that's the case?
Yeah, it's called the red zone, right? And that's a phenomenon we see in higher education, and it's a well-known fact is that the red zone is considered the first 6 weeks of a first-year student's college experience. That is when they are most likely to be impacted by sexual assault. And people always ask, well, why? Well, if you think back to what we just talked about, which are knowing how to go out with your friends and stay safe, is most people when they come to college, you don't come to college with your best friends in your back pocket. And so you are new in a new setting, you're in a new environment, you're getting to know people. And so some of these basic conversations are harder. Maybe you're going out and we want students to go out and meet new people and have fun, but really knowing that it's the lack of formed community that put you more at risk. It is maybe the lack of education and knowledge or even use of alcohol prior to coming to college, because what we know is 30% of students in college don't drink. And that's probably the same of coming into college, that we have a large percent of students who maybe have never drank alcohol before. And all of those put them more at risk for sexual assault. URI has really done a good job of trying to educate about the red zone. And we look at the education students receive at orientation. And then during their URI 101 or first year seminar is really focused on talking about sexual assault, talking about domestic dating violence, and also talking about some basic safety tips and making sure that our students know that we want them to be decent humans. And we want them to know that if you see something, we want you to say something. We want you to at times jump in and help your fellow ram. And so really understanding too that those first 6 weeks are crucial, not just for being at risk of a sexual assault. It's more crucial, you're developing your sense of community here at the university. And so, again, that's why going out, maybe at first you go out with your own personal plan, and then breaking it out to maybe you're comfortable with your roommate and you start making plans with them, but you start building that community early. Communities are what keep people safe.
And for people who are going out, what are some warning signs that a person may give off indicating that they may become violent or forceful, either sexually or physically? I know that's going to look different via in a party setting with a stranger or situationship type thing versus maybe within a relationship, domestic violence wise, if you want to break it up.
Yeah, I think biggest thing is to trust your gut. If something makes you feel uncomfortable, there is a reason for it. Mm-hmm. And understanding that it is okay to trust your gut. I also think what we know is, and this is true whether we're talking about domestic or dating violence or whether we're talking about an isolated incident at a party, is that most of the time before anyone becomes violent, they're going to test someone's boundaries. And so they may try something that is meant to make someone uncomfortable. And then based on that person's reaction at times, they will then decide if they're going to take it a step further or not. So it may be something as, say you're at a party situation and they're talking and then they reach out and grab and touch your butt, right? And some people, when they are uncomfortable, some people will laugh it off or try to kind of ignore and minimize. Some people immediately will say, like, don't do that again, or will back up or walk away. Based on those little reactions, that is typically a sign, right? Is that if they cross a boundary once, guess what? They're going to do it again. And when we talk about domestic and dating violence as well, is there's usually threats of violence before violence occurs, right? There's usually threats of, or maybe there's property destruction, maybe someone, instead of hitting someone in the face, is punching the wall next to them. But usually what we see is this like escalation and dangerous or unhealthy or unsafe behaviors prior to a physical incident occurring. And again, there's no perfect formula for either of this, but it's one of those things where if you're in a relationship and someone does something that doesn't make you feel safe or doesn't make you feel like you're respected or an equal partner, addressing that immediately, whether that means having a conversation about it, whether that means being like, you know what, I can no longer be with you, or even knowing too, if you're at a party and someone does something that makes you uncomfortable, knowing that it's okay to walk away. You're not being rude. You are doing what you deserve as a human and not to be made uncomfortable in any situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember I went to one of your seminars and you talked about domestic violence and some of those signs also being like if your partner excludes you from friends or isolates you from friends.
Absolutely.
I think one of them was checking their phone or texts or not trusting them.
Yeah, isolation is huge in domestic and dating violence, is cutting that person off from their resources or their support people, because the less someone has in their inner circle to go to if something happens, the more control that other person has over the individual. And a lot of times, too, again, before physical domestic violence, we tend to see emotional. And we tend to see belittling, jealousy, control. And a huge thing, too, is, as I said earlier, is sharing location. And so when you're going out with your friends, and to be safe, you share locations. But if you're in a relationship with someone and your partner is sharing location so they can control, they can show up unannounced, they can ask, why did you take a picture with X, Y, and Z? Or you can go out, but you need to be home by 10. And then at 10, they're texting you, you're still at blah, blah, blah's house. Why aren't you on your way home? Huge red flags. And so, again, I always say in a relationship, we should be talking about equal partners. We should be talking about people who feel supported by someone, they feel respected by someone, and equal trust in that relationship and not feeling like someone is superior than the other. I think those are huge.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And what are some other resources or tips that students can use to stay safe in any setting, not just at parties, whether it's, walking at night on campus or any other worries or places that students may feel unsafe? I know we have Rhode Safe Rides, if you want to talk about that and some other tips.
Yeah, so Rhode Safe Rides is open to any student. It typically runs till 1 a.m., and it is a program where either public safety, a shuttle, or even a member of the UIPD will pick up and escort someone to another place on campus. So if you're leaving a friend's dorm and you have to walk across campus and you just feel more comfortable, that's when Rhode Safe Rides come in. So you can call the phone number, which is very easy. It's actually 401-874-SAFE. Or if you have the TransLock app downloaded, which is the same app that shows shuttles, etc., you can actually request a Rhode Safe Ride. And that even at times goes to the Amtrak as well. But beyond just Rhode Safe Rides, too, it's utilizing your other resources on campus. And people always say, well, What about night? Knowing that if you're in the residence halls, your RAs have been trained to deal with a variety of situations. And if they can't help you in the moment, they are able to connect with someone who can help you. And so utilizing them as a resource, I think, is huge. Even professors, academic advisors, coaches, et cetera, but like utilizing those who work here at the university, because a lot of times most individuals want to help students. That's why they work here. And they'll be able to connect you to someone who can. But really, it's, Rhode Safe Rides, you always talk about RAs, hall directors, because those are the ones who are typically around at night.
Mm-hmm. And if you see something, definitely say something. Mm-hmm. Report it, to an RA, to a hall director. Because our campus is a harm reduction campus. We're not trying to get people in trouble. I was an RA last year. We're not narcs. We're trying to keep people safe. There's a lot of times where we won't report stuff. We just want to make sure that you are safe. Yeah. The only time that you'll be reported is if you're a danger to yourself, or you're disturbing the community or a danger to the community. And even that, there's not a huge penalty for it. Even with the Rhode Safe Rides, like you can use it when you're drunk. They're not going to call the police on you if you're underage. They just are trying to make sure you're getting home safe. Yeah,
and even beyond, I want to mention real quick is the Report It page. And so the Report It page is through the Dean of Students Office. And if you just type in Report It, Dean of Students Office, URI, the page will come up. And it's just a bunch of different areas where you can report different types of concerns, whether it's a substance concern, whether it's a sexual assault, domestic violence, a mental health concern. But there are a lot of different resources on campus.
Before we wrap up, a quick reminder that all information shared in today's podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Thank you for listening to another episode of Rhode Wellness. If you like what you heard today, tune in every Tuesday on all podcast platforms for more. If you want to stay up to date on events and healthcare tips, please follow us at URI Health Promotions on Instagram. And if you have any ideas for future podcast episodes or more social media content that you'd like to see, please feel free to DM us or email us. Until next time, take care and stay healthy.